blizzard, 2 children, a desperate race against time. But what happened after the storm would change everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from, and why you're following this. The harsh winter of 1876 had descended upon Montana territory with unforgiving fury. Snow blanketed the rolling plains and foothills of what would later become Glacier County, transforming the landscape into a vast sea of white. Sarah Mitchell, a 32-year-old widow, stood at the window of her modest cabin, watching as another blizzard gathered strength on the horizon. Sarah had moved west from Boston 3 years earlier, following her husband Thomas's death from pneumonia. The frontier represented a fresh start, though life as a solitary woman running a small trading post at the edge of Blackfeet territory presented daily challenges. Her nearest neighbors, the Peterson family, lived 4 miles away, and Fort Benton was a 2-day journey by horse in good weather. Looks like another bad one coming, Sarah muttered to herself, securing the window shutters. The wind had already begun to howl, a mournful sound that echoed the loneliness she often felt but rarely acknowledged. She busied herself preparing for the storm, bringing extra firewood inside and checking her supplies. The trading post had been quiet for days, with most travelers and locals alike having the good sense to seek proper shelter before the worst of winter set in. Sarah had learned to appreciate these periods of solitude, using them to read the books she'd brought from back east, or to work on the detailed journal she maintained. As darkness fell, the storm unleashed its full fury. Wind rattled the cabin's sturdy walls, and snow piled against the door. Sarah stoked the fire in the stone hearth and settled into her rocking chair with a cup of hot tea, a woolen blanket draped across her lap. Just another Montana winter, she reassured herself, though something about this particular storm left her feeling uneasy. Perhaps it was the unusual intensity of the wind or the way the temperature had dropped so suddenly. Sleep came fitfully that night, interrupted by the storm's relentless assault. Shortly before dawn, Sarah jolted awake, certain she'd heard something beyond the wind's howl. She sat upright, straining to listen. There it was again, a sound unlike the storm's voice. Grabbing her rifle from beside the bed and wrapping a heavy shawl around her shoulders, Sarah moved cautiously toward the door. The sound came again, clearer now, a child's voice calling out weakly. "Hello?" Sarah called through the door. "Is someone there?" The response was faint but unmistakable, a child crying. Without hesitation, Sarah pulled open the door, fighting against the wind that threatened to tear it from her grasp. The snow had drifted nearly to her knees, and the pre-dawn darkness, combined with the swirling snow, made it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. "Where are you?" she called out, her voice nearly lost in the howling wind. A small figure materialized from the whiteness, stumbling toward her. It was a boy, no more than 10 years old, his dark hair crusted with ice and snow. His clothing, though clearly designed for winter, was insufficient against the blizzard's fury. Most telling were the traditional Blackfeet leggings and moccasins he wore. "Please," the boy gasped, his English halting but clear enough. "My sister. Help." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Where is she?" she asked, already stepping out into the storm. The boy pointed toward a stand of pine trees about 50 yards from the cabin. "There, she cannot walk." "Stay here," Sarah ordered, pushing him gently toward the door. "Get inside by the fire." The boy shook his head firmly. "I show you." Together they fought through the snow, the wind cutting through Sarah's clothing like knives of ice. Under the relative shelter of the pines, they found a small girl, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, huddled against a tree trunk. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Sarah lifted the child into her arms, alarmed at how little she weighed and how cold she felt. "Let's go," she told the boy, who nodded gravely, his young face showing a maturity beyond his years. The journey back to the cabin seemed to take hours rather than minutes. Once inside, Sarah immediately set to work. She laid the unconscious girl on her bed and began removing her wet clothing, while instructing the boy to stand close to the fire. "What's your name?" she asked him as she wrapped his sister in warm blankets. "I am Makii," he replied, his teeth chattering. "She is Apikuni." "What were you doing out in such weather?" Sarah asked, not unkindly, as she prepared hot broth. Makai looked down. "We were with our father hunting. We were separated when the storm came suddenly. Father told us to find shelter if we became lost. We tried. His voice broke. You did well, Sarah assured him, helping him into dry clothing, a shirt and trousers left behind by a trader months ago. You saved your sister's life bringing her here. Throughout that day and the following night, Sarah tended to the children. Apekuni's condition was worrisome. Her extremities showed signs of frostbite, and she drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes speaking in her native tongue, words Sarah couldn't understand. Maki remained steadfastly by his sister's side, translating when needed and helping Sarah apply the herbal remedies she'd learned from both her own grandmother and from trading with the Blackfeet women who occasionally visited her post. Our father is a warrior, Maki told Sarah as they sat vigil. His name is Iniskimi. It means buffalo stone. He will find us. Sarah nodded, hoping the boy's faith would be rewarded, though she feared what might have happened to their father in the same storm that had nearly claimed his children. The blizzard continued unabated, and she knew that survival in such conditions, even for an experienced Blackfeet hunter, would be challenging. We will keep you safe until he does, she promised, watching as the boy finally succumbed to exhaustion, his head nodding forward onto the edge of the bed where his sister lay. Outside, the storm showed no signs of relenting, and Sarah settled in for what she knew would be a long vigil, her thoughts turning to the father somewhere out in that frozen wilderness, perhaps searching desperately for his children, or perhaps already claimed by the merciless winter. By the third day, the blizzard had finally begun to abate. Weak sunlight filtered through the clouds, illuminating a world transformed into sculptural drifts of white. Inside the cabin, Apekuni had shown significant improvement. Her fever had broken during the night, and though she remained weak, her eyes were clear and alert. Sarah stood at the stove stirring a pot of venison stew when Maki approached her, his expression solemn. My father will be looking for us, he said, his voice steady despite the worry evident in his eyes. He will follow our tracks, but the snow… Sarah nodded, understanding his concern. The tracks will be covered, but we can help him find you. After breakfast, Sarah bundled herself in her warmest clothing and, with Maki's help, fashioned a tall pole from a young pine tree. To its top, she attached a bright red woolen blanket, a makeshift flag that would be visible for miles across the snow-covered landscape. This will help, she told the children as she secured the pole beside the cabin. And when the weather clears more, we'll fire 3 shots each morning and evening. Sound carries far in the cold air. Apekuni, now sitting wrapped in blankets by the fire, spoke softly in her native language. Maki translated, She says you have a good heart. She asks why you help us. Sarah paused, considering the question. Because it's what anyone should do, she finally replied, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. Relations between settlers and the Blackfeet were complex and often tense. Many of her white neighbors viewed the indigenous people with suspicion at best, outright hostility at worst. Not everyone would help Blackfeet children, Maki said, echoing her unspoken thought with surprising perceptiveness. Sarah met his gaze directly. Then they've forgotten what it means to be human. The days fell into a rhythm. Each morning and evening, Sarah fired 3 shots from her rifle into the air, a signal that might guide Iniskimi to his children. During the day, she taught the children English words they didn't know, while they, in turn, taught her phrases in their language. Apekuni recovered quickly, displaying a resilience that impressed Sarah. Soon, the little girl was helping with simple chores around the cabin, her serious expression occasionally breaking into a shy smile. On the 6th day, as Sarah was showing Apekuni how to knead bread dough, Maki suddenly stiffened, his head tilting as if listening. What is it? Sarah asked, wiping flour from her hands. Horses, the boy said, already moving toward the door. More than one. Sarah grabbed her rifle, a precautionary measure, and followed him outside. The day was clear, the sun glinting off the snow with almost painful brightness. In the distance, she could make out 3 riders approaching slowly, leading a 4th horse that carried what appeared to be a travois. Is it your father? She asked Maki, who was shading his eyes against the glare. The boy nodded, his face breaking into the first truly carefree smile she'd seen from him. Yes, and my uncle's. Apekuni had followed them outside, wrapped in a blanket. When she spotted the riders, she let out a cry of joy, waving her arms despite the cold. As the riders drew closer, Sarah could make out more details. The man in the lead sat tall in his saddle, his face weathered and proud beneath a fur-lined hat. His clothing was a blend of traditional Blackfeet and items clearly obtained through trade with white settlers. Most striking was the intensity of his gaze, fixed upon his children with a mixture of relief and joy. The riders halted about 20 yards from the cabin. The leader dismounted in a fluid motion that spoke of a lifetime on horseback. Maki and Apikuni ran to him, and he knelt in the snow to embrace them, speaking rapidly in their language, his hands moving over them as if to reassure himself they were real and unharmed. Sarah remained by the cabin door, her rifle now lowered, giving the family their moment of reunion. After a few minutes, the man rose and approached her, his children at his side. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched in his face, the several days' growth of beard, and the cuts and bruises that spoke of a difficult journey. "I am Iniskimi," he said, his English clear though heavily accented. "These are my children whom you have saved." Sarah nodded. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. They're brave children. You should be proud." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I am. But it is to you I owe a debt that cannot be measured." One of the other men called out something in their language. Iniskimi nodded and turned back to Sarah. "We have traveled far in search of my children. My companions are tired and cold. May we rest here before continuing to our winter camp?" "Of course," Sarah replied, stepping aside to gesture toward the cabin door. "Please come inside. There's food and warmth." The 4 Blackfeet men entered the cabin, with a dignity that seemed at odds with their exhausted state. They removed their outer garments and weapons, placing them neatly by the door. Sarah busied herself preparing food, aware of Iniskimi's eyes following her movements. As they ate the stew she provided, Maki excitedly recounted their ordeal to his father and uncles, with Apikuni occasionally interjecting. Sarah understood little of what was said, but the tone and gestures made the narrative clear enough. When Maki pointed to the herbal remedies Sarah had used for Apikuni's frostbite, Iniskimi looked at her with newfound respect. "You know our medicines," he observed. Sarah shook her head modestly. "Only a little. I've learned from the Blackfeet women who visit to trade. They've been generous with their knowledge." "You have listened well," he replied. "Many white people do not." After the meal, Iniskimi's companions prepared to continue their journey to the Blackfeet winter camp, which Iniskimi explained was a day's ride to the northwest. To Sarah's surprise, Iniskimi himself made no move to join them. When she questioned this, he said simply, "I must properly thank the one who saved my children. This cannot be done quickly or carelessly." The other men departed with the children, who embraced Sarah tearfully before leaving. Pikuni pressed a small beaded pouch into Sarah's hand, a gift the girl had made during her recovery. Left alone with Iniskimi, Sarah felt a strange mixture of curiosity and apprehension. His presence filled the small cabin, not through any deliberate intimidation, but simply through the force of his personality. "Your journey must have been difficult," she said, breaking the silence as she stoked the fire. "Yes," he agreed, his gaze distant. "When the storm separated us, I searched until my horse could go no further. Then I returned to our camp for help." His eyes met hers. "I did not know if I would find them alive." "They're remarkable children," Sarah said. Maki especially showed wisdom beyond his years. Iniskimi nodded, pride evident in his expression. "He will be a leader one day. But now, I wish to understand how a white woman came to be living alone at the edge of Blackfeet territory, with knowledge of our ways and a heart open to our children." Sarah hesitated, then began to tell him her story. Of Boston, of Thomas, of her journey west seeking something she couldn't quite name. As the afternoon waned into evening, their conversation continued, each sharing pieces of their lives with a frankness that surprised them both. "Tomorrow," Iniskimi said as they prepared to sleep, he on a pallet near the fire, she in her bed, "I will show you my gratitude in the way of my people." Sarah, already drifting towards sleep, wondered what form this gratitude might take, and why the prospect filled her with both anticipation and an inexplicable nervousness. Dawn broke clear and cold, the sky a vast blue canvas stretching over the snow-covered landscape. Sarah woke to find Iniskimi already up, tending to the fire with practiced ease. He acknowledged her with a nod, his expression revealing little of his thoughts. "I must go to my horse," he said as she prepared a simple breakfast of cornmeal porridge and dried berries. "There are things I brought for this day." Sarah watched through the window as he made his way to where his horse was sheltered beside the cabin. From the saddlebags, he retrieved several items wrapped in soft leather, handling them with reverence. When he returned, his demeanor had subtly shifted. There was a ceremonial quality to his movements now, a formality that hadn't been present before. "In my tradition," Iniskimi explained as they sat across from each other at Sarah's small table, "when someone saves a life, especially the life of a child, it creates a bond that cannot be broken. The one who is saved and their family become connected to the Savior." He unwrapped one of the leather bundles, revealing an intricately beaded necklace of blue and white beads with a central pendant of polished abalone shell. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said, holding it toward Sarah. "She was a healer among our people, known for her wisdom and compassion. When you tended my daughter with herbs and care, you walked in her footsteps." Sarah hesitated, aware of the significance of such a gift. "It's beautiful, but surely too valuable to give to a stranger." "You are no stranger," Iniskimi replied firmly. "You are now part of the story of my family. My children will tell their children of Sarah, the woman who found them in the snow and brought them back to life." With careful movements, he rose and placed the necklace over her head. The shell pendant rested cool against her skin, catching the morning light that streamed through the window. "Thank you," Sarah said, touching the necklace gently. "I will treasure it." Iniskimi nodded, seemingly satisfied, and returned to his seat. "There is more to the tradition," he continued. "Stories must be exchanged so that each understands the other's journey. Yesterday, you told me how you came to this place. Today, if you wish, I will tell you of my path." Sarah nodded, genuinely curious. "I would like that very much." Over the next hours, as the winter sun arced across the sky, Iniskimi shared the story of his life. He spoke of his childhood in a time when the buffalo still roamed in great numbers, of his training as a warrior, and of the changes he had witnessed as white settlers pushed ever westward. He told of losing his wife to smallpox 3 winters past, leaving him to raise Maki and Apikuni alone. "The world is changing faster than many of my people can accept," he said, his voice taking on a deeper resonance. "I have chosen to learn the ways of the white man, their language, their trading, not because I believe their path is better, but because I must understand it to help my people navigate what is to come. It can't be easy," Sarah observed, "to stand between 2 worlds." Iniskimi's gaze met hers directly. "No easier than for a woman alone to run a trading post on the frontier, I imagine." Sarah smiled at that, acknowledging the truth in his words. "We each do what we must." As afternoon approached, Iniskimi suggested they step outside. "There is something I wish to show you," he said, reaching for his coat. The air was crisp and still, the snow glittering under the winter sun. Iniskimi led Sarah to a small clearing beside the cabin, where he used a stick to draw a large circle in the snow. "This represents the medicine wheel," he explained, adding lines that divided the circle into quadrants. "It teaches us that life moves in cycles, like the seasons, like the sun and moon. Each direction has meaning, each part connected to the whole." As he spoke, he moved around the circle, explaining how the east represented spring, beginnings, and illumination. The south was summer, growth, and innocence. The west symbolized autumn, introspection, and maturity, while the north stood for winter, wisdom, and the completion of the cycle. "Your actions," he told Sarah, standing in the northern quadrant, "showed the wisdom of one who understands that all people are connected, regardless of the color of their skin or the language they speak. This is the highest teaching of the medicine wheel." Sarah listened, moved by both his words and the solemn way he shared this aspect of his culture with her. "I've always believed that kindness shouldn't recognize boundaries," she said quietly, "though I've seen plenty who disagree." Iniskimi nodded. "In both our peoples there are those whose hearts are closed by fear, but there are also those like you who remember the truth, that we are all related." As they returned to the cabin, the temperature beginning to drop with the approaching evening, Sarah felt a shift in her understanding of this man. He was not simply a Blackfeet warrior, a father, or a widower. He was a philosopher, a keeper of traditions, and a pragmatist facing a changing world with both dignity and adaptability. Inside, as they prepared the evening meal together, their conversation flowed more easily. Sarah found herself sharing stories of her childhood in Boston, of her parents and the books that had shaped her thinking. Iniskimi listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed his keen intellect and curiosity about the world beyond his experience. "Tomorrow I must return to my people," he said as they sat before the fire after their meal. "Maki and Apikuni will be waiting, and there are matters that require my attention at our winter camp." Sarah nodded, surprised by the pang of regret she felt at the thought of his departure. "Of course. Your children need you." "Before I go," Iniskimi continued, reaching for the final wrapped bundle he had brought, "there is one more tradition to fulfill." He unwrapped the leather to reveal a pipe, beautifully crafted from red stone with a wooden stem decorated with porcupine quills and feathers. "This is a sacred pipe," he explained. "Among my people, smoking together seals bonds between individuals and families. It is a way of saying that what has passed between us is witnessed by the Creator." Sarah watched as he prepared the pipe with a mixture of tobacco and herbs, his movements deliberate and reverent. He lit it using a coal from the fire, then offered it to her first, a gesture of respect. "You don't have to inhale deeply," he instructed gently. "It is the participation that matters." Sarah took the pipe carefully, following his guidance. The smoke was aromatic and surprisingly smooth, with hints of sweetgrass and something else she couldn't identify. After taking a small puff, she passed the pipe back to Iniskimi, who repeated the process, then spoke words in his language that seemed to rise with the smoke toward the ceiling. "What did you say?" Sarah asked when he had finished. "I asked that the Creator continue to watch over you and keep your heart strong," he translated. "And I pledged that the children of my children will know your name and what you did." They passed the pipe between them 3 more times in silence, the ritual creating a sense of solemnity and connection that transcended words. When it was complete, Iniskimi carefully cleaned the pipe and rewrapped it. "Now," he said with quiet certainty, "we are bound by something stronger than blood. My people will know that Sarah Mitchell is a friend who is to be respected and protected." Sarah felt the weight of his words, understanding that what had transpired was no small thing. In the span of a week, her life had intersected with his in a way neither could have anticipated, creating connections that defied the tensions between their respective communities. As they prepared for sleep on their final night under the same roof, Sarah found herself wondering how this encounter might reshape her understanding of her place in this harsh but beautiful territory, and whether their paths might cross again in the seasons to come. Morning arrived with a gentle snowfall, large flakes drifting lazily from a pearl-gray sky. Sarah woke earlier than usual, aware that this day would mark Iniskimi's departure. She found him outside, already tending to his horse, securing his belongings for the journey ahead. "The snow is light," he observed as she approached, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders. "Good traveling weather." Sarah nodded, glancing up at the sky. "It should clear by midday. Will you reach your camp before nightfall?" "Yes," Iniskimi replied, adjusting the saddle. "I know these lands well, even in winter." They shared a simple breakfast, the conversation sparse, yet comfortable. As Iniskimi prepared for his final departure, he turned to Sarah with unexpected directness. "Your trading post, do you plan to remain here through the seasons to come?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "Yes," she answered after a moment's consideration. "This is my home now. I've built something here that feels worthwhile." Iniskimi nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Then I would propose an arrangement that might benefit us both." He explained that his people often traded with the military outposts or larger settlements, where they frequently received poor compensation for their goods. A fair trading relationship with Sarah's post would provide his band with necessary supplies while offering her unique items from Blackfeet craftsmanship that would be valuable to her other customers. "The winter camp where my people now stay is 2 days' ride northwest," he said. "When spring comes, we will move closer to these foothills for the summer hunting. I could direct some of our trading through your post." Sarah considered the proposal, recognizing both its practical advantages and its deeper significance. Such an arrangement would represent a bridge between communities often separated by suspicion and misunderstanding. I would welcome that, she replied sincerely. Your people will always receive fair treatment here. Iniskimi's expression remained composed, but satisfaction showed in his eyes. Then it is settled. When the snow eagle returns from the south, you will see me again, with goods to trade, and perhaps my children, who would be pleased to visit the woman who saved them. The mention of Maki and Apikuni brought a smile to Sarah's face. I would like that very much. They're remarkable children. As Iniskimi prepared to mount his horse, he paused, reaching into a small pouch at his waist. From it, he withdrew a smooth stone, deep black with veins of white quartz running through it. This is a buffalo stone, he said, placing it in Sarah's palm. My namesake. It is said to bring protection to those who carry it. Among my people, such stones are considered sacred, found only when they wish to be found. Sarah closed her fingers around the stone, feeling its cool weight. Thank you. I'll keep it with me. Iniskimi mounted his horse with fluid grace, gathering the reins. Until the spring, then. Until spring, Sarah echoed, stepping back as he turned his horse toward the northwest. She watched until horse and rider became a distant silhouette against the white landscape, then disappeared entirely beyond a ridge. Only then did she return inside, the cabin suddenly seeming larger and quieter than before. The remainder of winter passed slowly. Sarah maintained her trading post, welcoming the occasional traveler or settler who braved the winter trails. To each, she now offered items of Blackfeet craftsmanship that had been left behind by Iniskimi. Small pouches, moccasins, and beadwork that fetched good prices and garnered admiration. When asked about these items, Sarah would simply say they came from friends among the Blackfeet, a statement that often raised eyebrows, but which she offered without elaboration. The buffalo stone remained in her pocket, a tangible reminder of the unexpected connection she had formed. As February turned to March, the first signs of spring's approach became evident. The days lengthened, and the relentless cold began to ease its grip on the land. Sarah found herself watching the northwestern horizon more frequently, though she knew it was still too early for Iniskimi's return. Word of Sarah's unusual friendship with a Blackfeet family spread through the scattered community of settlers. Some reacted with suspicion, others with curiosity. Harriet Peterson, whose family owned the nearest homestead, rode over specifically to inquire about the rumors. Is it true then? Harriet asked as they sat at Sarah's table. You harbored Indians in your home? I sheltered 2 children who were lost in a blizzard, Sarah replied evenly. Their father came to retrieve them. There's little more to tell. Harriet's expression revealed her skepticism. And now I hear you're planning to trade with them regularly? Sarah, have you considered how that might appear to other settlers? These are dangerous times. I've considered it carefully, Sarah said, her voice firm but not unkind. I believe building bridges serves everyone better than fortifying walls. The Blackfeet have occupied this territory for generations. Learning to coexist peacefully seems the wiser course. Though Harriet departed unconvinced, the conversation strengthened Sarah's resolve. The connection she had formed with Iniskimi and his children represented something important, a small counterpoint to the prevailing narrative of inevitable conflict between natives and settlers. April arrived with warming winds and the first green shoots emerging from the thawing earth. True to Iniskimi's prediction, birds began to return from their winter migrations. Sarah found herself watching for snow eagles, remembering his words. On a clear morning in late April, as Sarah was taking inventory of her supplies, she heard the distinctive sound of hoofbeats approaching. Moving to the door, she saw a group of riders cresting the hill, a half-dozen Blackfeet on horseback, leading pack horses laden with goods. At their head rode Iniskimi, flanked by Maki and Apikuni. Sarah stepped outside, shading her eyes against the spring sunshine. The children spotted her first, waving enthusiastically. Apikuni, looking healthy and vibrant, called out a greeting in English that carried clearly across the distance. As the riders drew nearer, Sarah could see that Iniskimi wore the formal attire of a Blackfeet leader, a fringed buckskin shirt adorned with porcupine quillwork, his hair in 2 braids wrapped with otter fur. He dismounted with his customary grace, approaching Sarah with dignity while the others remained a respectful distance behind. "The Snow Eagle has returned," he said by way of greeting, a subtle smile softening his features. "And as promised, so have we." "Welcome," Sarah replied, genuinely pleased to see him, to see all of them. "Your timing is perfect. I was just taking stock of what supplies I need for the coming months." Maki and Apikuni could contain themselves no longer. They dismounted and rushed forward, Apikuni throwing her arms around Sarah's waist while Maki, more reserved but equally pleased, stood nearby, grinning. "We brought many things to trade," Apikuni announced proudly. "I helped make the moccasins." Over the next hours, a pattern emerged that would become familiar in the months and years to come. The Blackfeet visitors displayed their goods, beautifully tanned hides, intricate beadwork, medicinal herbs, and various crafts. Sarah offered fair prices in trade goods: flour, coffee, sugar, tools, and fabric. The atmosphere was one of mutual respect and growing trust. As the trading concluded, Inaskimi invited Sarah to visit their summer camp, an unprecedented gesture that signified her unique status. "My people wish to meet the woman who saved the children of Buffalo Stone," he explained. "It would honor us if you would come when the moon is full." Sarah accepted the invitation, aware of its significance. That evening, as the Blackfeet prepared to depart, they would camp nearby and continue their journey in the morning. Inaskimi and Sarah found a moment to speak privately. "What you have started here," he told her, gesturing to encompass the trading post and the day's activities, "is more important than you may realize. Small bridges between our peoples may someday grow into pathways of understanding." Sarah nodded, sharing his perspective. "It won't always be easy. There are those on both sides who prefer distance and distrust." "Yes," Inaskimi acknowledged. "The path ahead has many obstacles, but we have seen that when necessity brings us together, a blizzard, 2 lost children, a woman with an open heart, something valuable can emerge." As they stood watching the sunset paint the prairie in hues of gold and amber, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. A chance encounter during a blizzard had created connections that now promised to reshape her life on the frontier. Where once she had felt isolated, she now stood at the intersection of 2 worlds, with the opportunity to foster understanding rather than division. When the Blackfeet departed the